Thanks for being here today on short notice, but I thought it was important to get department heads and all the leadership teams from all the departments together in one room to hear sort of the latest on the 2015 budget process. Last night, as you I'm sure know, the City Council defeated the 2015 budget after they approved it. I'll repeat that. They defeated the 2015 budget about a half an hour after they approved it in committee. I'm not exactly sure why they did it, but they did it. This unique action, as Controller Russ Lloyd says, puts us in uncharted waters. And I think that's absolutely the case. We worked till about 10:30 last night, and then all day today, and I'll give you a chance to ask questions later, but I can tell you, based on the fact that we are in uncharted waters, we may not be able to answer every question that you have. But we'll try. Just so you know, this process began in the public hearings back in August when we presented to the council our original budget, which looked like this. It's a balanced budget, we believe, with a surplus. Through months of hard work, weeks of hard work with many of you in this room, we sat down with the leadership of the council trying to figure out where we wanted to land with a budget that they could live with. At some point, they came to us and said they wanted us to cut $11 million from the budget. $11 million between general fund cuts and capital cuts. Ladies and gentlemen, that would have been devastating to the city. We would have had to lay off a lot of people. And frankly, we don't think it's necessary. So their list of suggested cuts was in some cases vague or sketchy. But just to give you an idea, they wanted to eliminate all the drainage projects from Brent's budget. They wanted to cut in half the amount of money we used to demolish abandoned buildings. They wanted to reduce the amount of road paving for next year. They wanted to make cuts to both police and fire. They wanted to close city pools, as we've heard about. And they wanted to eliminate playground equipment for our low-income neighborhoods. This is a very interesting point. They wanted to eliminate it because they wanted to have the say of where the equipment worked. And one council member said, you can call it micromanagement if you want. And that's in fact what this budget represents. That's what they're trying to do with that one line item and several others. Those cuts, $11+ million, would have had a detrimental impact on the quality of life, and it would really inhibited your ability, our ability as a team, to deliver the kind of quality services that we need for our citizens. So when we determined that was just not attainable, the council said, the leadership of the council said, okay, we'd like to get you down, we'd like to get the general fund budget down in the $85 million range. Okay, so we went to work, and we put together cuts that totaled $2.8 million. And we got to $2.8 million by not cutting any one initiative. We didn't go in and whack one department. We worked with departments all across the city spectrum to find money. We asked you to tighten your belts even further. That's how we got to the $2.8 million. So that got the general fund budget down to $85.8 million, 85.8. So we thought we were in the ballpark of where they wanted to go. That's when the council came to us, the leadership, and said, we'd like for you to cut another $600,000 from the budget. $600,000. So last night, keep in mind we're at $2.8 million in cuts. Last night they cut Roberts Park, $1.5 million. They cut ShotSpotter, and they cut the funding we requested for Mesker Amphitheater. So that would have made the total cuts last night $4.6 million. Let's see. And while I certainly understand why they wanted to cut Roberts Park and ShotSpotter, certainly one could probably say for political purposes, I understand it. I don't agree with it, but I at least understand it. I hope you get the sense through all this that we have done most of the heavy lifting in this process. We've done the heavy lifting. And then the council could not even perform the statutory requirement that's laid out for them, and that is to pass a budget. Now the job's back to us to try and keep this thing going. November 1st, Saturday, is the deadline. Is that right, Russ? So we'd like to keep this process moving, and it's up to me and all of you, with your help, that we'll keep this process alive. For the sake of the city and to keep Evansville moving forward, we're going to do this. We're going to do the job, and we're going to ask them to come back and do the job that they are required by law to do. This is not the federal government, where if you don't pass a budget, there's a shutdown. This is city government. And in city government, when there's inaction on a budget, we revert back to last year's budget. In that case, this year's. That will just create tremendous chaos. And the chaos, what Russ will describe in just a minute or two. In fact, I'll have him get up and do that now. Russ, just come on up. He's prepared a list of sort of variances and ramifications of what happens if no budget is passed and we revert back to this. And I hope you take some notes. The numbers are pretty staggering. I think you'll get it. But that's why we're going to need everyone's help in this room to kind of get through this process. So with that, Russ, I'll give you some of these microphones.
No, please don't.
There'll be a pause in the action here. You can talk amongst yourselves. There, listen. There's one. Okay, cue the controller.
Thanks, Mayor. Counting the county council and former mayor, this is my 13th budget. I can testify it's the worst that we've had, worst that I've been through. And just to the average person, going back to 2014, well, that doesn't sound like it's that hard. It's just a year ago, 14 versus 15. But let's look at some of the variances. And obviously, the city council passed a salary ordinance, so they passed the pay raises for city employees. The variance, so what we would have to do is take the 2014 numbers and shoehorn 2015 into those. And here's some of the variances. The salaries, the difference, the greater difference in 2015, $1,460,000. So that's money that would have to be found in the budget. Social Security, $26,000, HERF, $360,000. Health insurance is a big one, $704,000, because obviously the claims have gone up over the prior year. Workman's comp insurance, we just had a rough year the prior couple years, and so our premiums went up a pretty good amount in 2015, $166,000. So that's money that would have to be found. Liability insurance, the city self-insures. Of course, we had the storm damage. We haven't seen the full increase in those premiums, but it's $20,000 additional. Bond payments, and this does not count the utilities who have their own separate funding, but for the city, which would be Redevelopment Commission, Arena, and some of the others, $164,000. So 2015's budget was higher by $164,000, so we would have to find that. A good number is leases. Our leases, we paid them down, so it's actually $45,000 lower, so that would be a favorable variance. In the 2014 budget, we didn't have anything for elections, but in 2015, the city has to fund the city election. That's $405,675. Normally that comes out of the local income tax, but anyway, we had that in the 2015 budget, but it's not in 2014, so we'll have to come up with additional $405,000 there. And then contractual services have increased. This is through all city departments, and it's over $9 million, but the variance the increase, 162,156. Adding that total, which is variances that we would have to find in the 214 numbers, 3,424,217. The sewer utility budget is from 2014 to 2015 is $10 million different because they've been ramping up for the EPA consent decree work and as well as expansion of the system. So there's a $10 million difference there. And you want me to go through a couple of these projects?
Yeah, hit a couple of those.
Okay. As you can imagine, the capital budget for 2014, 2015 are going to be quite a bit different because there's new projects that come up or other projects that get completed. So items that in 2015 that wouldn't be funded or that we don't have the money to fund, Washington Avenue and Weinbach intersection, there'll be no money to do that, even though that's a project that's supposed to be completed. It's a high accident intersection. One of the worst parts of this, and we had talked to the state about it, property taxes. The city's levy would be frozen at the 2014 level, which means if there's any growth in assessed value, which we think there will be, the city would not be able to collect any additional property tax, so it would be frozen at approximately 56 million. So if that we're allowed 2.7% by the state in growth, which could be up to $1.5 million, the city would not be able to collect that. We would be frozen at 214 level, which means we'd be passing on this money, and theoretically that's going to have to be cut as well. So the overall budget, 3.5 million is what we'll have to cut to cover just the cost of all these salary, insurance, utilities, and things like that. The 10 million in the sewer utility, 4.5 million is for consent decree, which are projects that the city committed to the EPA to go forward with. And we're not sure how that's going to affect the relationship with the EPA or the court settlement. It probably would affect it in a negative way. Other sewer capital projects, 1.8 million would not be funded, and then 400,000 in sewer maintenance costs would not be funded. 105,000 gas and electric increase for sewer. There's no funding, so you'd have to revert back to the budget. And I think that's it at this point, but certainly be very difficult to find this money in the 2014 budget. It's going to cause us a lot of hardship, and it'd be very difficult to process.
Okay. Just before I came down here, I walked down to the city clerk's office and filed a notice with the city clerk. I called for a special meeting of the city council Thursday, October 30th at 5 p.m. in this room. It's time for the council to come back and do the work that the citizens of Evansville elected them to do. And that's to pass a budget. And that's what we're going to ask them to do. Finally, let me before I take your questions, let me comment on the gloom and doom picture that some members of council are painting. It's flat wrong. It's flat wrong. We believe it's flat wrong. Our city's financial advisor, Umbach and Associates, they tell us it's wrong. The State Board of Accounts believes it's wrong. The rating agencies believe it's wrong. So when Councilman Friend and others are out there painting a gloom and doom picture, they're just wrong. We have lived within our means. All of you have done what we've asked you to do. That's to live within the budgets that the council passes. We're not out spending extravagantly. One might argue that ShotSpotter or Roberts Park are extravagant. I would grant that. We still need them, but I understand if someone thinks that they're extravagant. Otherwise, we're providing the basic services that a city needs to grow. So don't believe the gloom and doom. Do believe that if they do not pass a budget on Thursday in a special meeting, you heard the ramifications that Russ outlined. It's going to be challenging. So between now and Thursday, here's what we're doing. We've spent almost all day with Julie, Janet, and Russ, Steve, and Ella and I, and we're identifying potential other cuts that we think departments could live with, that would not affect our ability to deliver services, or that would not represent a reduction in headcount. I don't know what that's going to be on Thursday at 5 o'clock. I'll know it when I see it. But we've got work to do between now and then. But here's what's going to happen. We've called the meeting. I hope they show up. At 5 o'clock, I will present another revised budget, and I'll ask them to pass it. And if it passes, we'll continue our jobs as normal, or as normally as we can, and we'll move past this. If they don't, then we'll have to really buckle down and figure out how to get through these hardships that Russ described. So thank you in advance for what I know is going to be a fun few days. We'll call many of you and say, come to our office in 30 seconds or less. We'll be timing it. And please be patient with us. We may, I would suspect we're going to ask questions we've already asked. Just be patient with us. We're all looking to get through this in the best possible way for the city of Evansville. So with that, I'll be happy to try and answer any questions as well as Russ. Chris.
Have you looked at cutting the full-time health care benefits for part-time city employees?
It's been considered. Steve?
Mayor, can you explain to everybody what reverting back to the 2014 budget might have impact on our long-term control plan, the mandate of federal government?
Yeah, so we would, as you all know, we went through the gut-wrenching task of raising sewer rates 32% this year. They'll go up 8% next year, 18% the year after that. All with the idea that we'll get to, that will start the funding of a $528 million plan, $540 million plan over 28 years. The EPA is considering our resubmitted plan. But by cutting this budget, it would delay the implementation of several projects that, while not approved yet, we know the EPA would want us to do, sort of the low-hanging fruit projects, if you will, of what is required. So it would have certainly a delay factor of when we could start some of these projects, some of which the engineering work has already begun on. Denise?
Oh, I was going to ask, they passed the amendment to not allow Roberts Park and ShotSpotter and the storage for the zoo. Does that remain in effect? Was that approved and passed, and will that remain, or since they?
Well, since they were not in the 2014 budget, they would not be as part of next year's spending plan.
And I have a second question.
Sure.
When you call this meeting, are they bound by anything to show up, or is it at the whim of them whether or not they show up?
I believe in good intentions, and I believe that the 9 members of the Common Council have good intentions to serve the city, and I expect and trust they'll be there. Rodney?
Yeah, is there something that we should be preparing for your call?
Just know your budget. Know your budget inside and out. Know where there is the least little wiggle room. And I mean, if it's $100 in a line item, we may be asking to take a $100 hit. I've gone through the entire general fund budget twice today myself, and I have I've got to go to get another highlighter. Okay? So I have lots of questions that Russ and his team will be answering for me, and if they can't provide the answer, many of you will be providing. So just know your budget.
They threw that 0.75%. You know, they threw that out for each department head to start looking at. I didn't know if that's something that we should start.
That is not where, that's not a direction we intend to go. We intend to go, we would use the $2.8 million amended budget as a baseline and offer probably some additional cuts on top of that. What they are, how much they are, I don't know yet. Kerry?
Mostly gonna be general fund stuff?
Probably a little bit of both. We're talking about what kind of mix that might be. And we're going to try and make it as painless as possible for all the departments, understanding that many of you have very specific requirements, whether it's for new equipment or for salt or whatever. You know, there are some line items that I would say are sacred and we're not going to cut at all. I can't tell them to you right off the top of my head. Go through it.
I guess I'm talking about like our MBH fund, that type of thing. Are we gonna have anything in there?
We may get down in there, but that's not going to be a priority. Anything else? Well, thanks for your time. The next few days is going to be fun. I hope that you'll all join us back here Thursday at 5 o'clock for something. Thank you, everybody. Have a good afternoon.